So the title of this lesson is Improvisation with Chords and Inversions, Volume 2, but then the subtitle is Harmonization, Progressions, and Improvisation. Now we've talked about harmonization, all right, and some reharmonization as well by talking about those different clusters. And the progressions, we just went through that progression. We've gone through several different other progressions. But now let's talk about improvisation. Now, up to this point, in this whole series, I've talked about how you could use chord tones, you know, for your improvisation. But then we've also talked now about how you can look and see if chords are diatonic, and if they're diatonic, you can use that major scale pretty much over all of those chords. So when I had that first progression, F to D minor to B flat to C, guess what? I use that F major scale over the entire progression. I also showed you how to kind of listen for notes that are going to sound good. Ending and starting on chord tones always sounds nice. All right? If you end on a tone that doesn't sound all that good, you can move it by a half step or a whole step to something that does sound good. But more importantly, you want to start to automatically hear and know, all right, if I'm playing an F major, B flat is not going to work on an F major. All right? Not to say you can't play the B flat, but see how I use that as a passing tone between the A and the C, the notes A and C. And so there, ending on that A for the chord tone D. Ending on G, which is part of a B flat 6, right? If I wanted to end on dominant, I'd do something like that. Right? Anyway, though, I think you get the point of how you can mess around with this and play around with it. A lot of times it's, I hate to say, that you got to mess around with it so that you start to come up with some patterns that you like, all right? It's not, I can just simply say do this, this, and this, and then it's always going to sound great. It's going to be a case-by-case situation. But now, let's talk about something else, another way in which you can kind of be guaranteed that you're going to come up with something that's going to sound good. And that is your chordal guide tones. These are the guide tones of your chord. Right? Now, basically, a guide tone is the 3rd and the 7th of a chord, but sometimes it can be the 5th as well, especially if the 5th is altered. So in the case of like E minor 7 flat 5, that flat 5 would definitely be a guide tone. Now you can also use the root of a chord as a guide tone, right? However, the root is oftentimes being played by the bass player, so it doesn't have as much punch to it, right? There's the 3rd and the 7th is really all that you need to guide yourself through these chords. Whereas the root, if you play just the roots, well, yeah, I mean, you get the sound of the root motion, but you wouldn't really know what the chord is. For instance, on this F chord, if I play the A, right, and the F, all right, I know that it's an F major chord, some type of F major. And that's perfect for that chord because it's just an F major triad, all right? Now, on the A7, though, if I play A and C sharp, now I don't know if that's an A major chord. I don't know if it's just an A major triad or an A7, whereas if I play C sharp and G, I know hands down, it is an A dominant 7th chord. So if I just go through and I create this line, I'm just playing some simple chords here in the left hand, right? Check this line out. Now, there's not much to write home about that line, but you can hear that. Oh, okay, yeah, it gives me some motion through the chord. So that's all right. Okay, yeah, I get this line weaving through, and then with those chords, it sounds nice. Oops. And then this is right from that progression, right? Which measures was it? It's 1 and 2? Yeah, from measures 1 and 2. Okay? So what I want you to try doing is you can go through the rest of the progression and try doing these guide tones. So like B flat 7, when I go to B flat minor 7, to E flat 7, and then back to F, F7 over E flat, D7 flat 9, over F sharp, G minor 7, F over A, okay, or do that as well. Okay, it gets a little bit tricky when you're dealing with the slash chords. I would probably play, this is my guide tone, the B flat. You can even just do the 3rd and the 5th, but probably the B flat and the 3rd. The B diminished, 3rd and 7th, and then the C sus, 7th, and the sus 4. Okay? So the guide tones are usually, like I said, the 3rd and the 7th of the chord. Why the 3rd and the 7th? Again, it's because they are the notes that define that chord. Okay? If I, again, on that B flat, just play the 3rd and the root, it's not being defined as any type of 7th chord. Okay? And that's fine because in that particular case, it's just a B flat triad. All right? So the guide tones that you're looking for are those notes that are going to define that chord. You might wonder, well, why not the 5th all of the time? Well, let's think about that. If I do that for my guide tones for B flat, that could be B flat major 7, that could be B flat dominant 7th. In the case of a triad, again, that's fine to do the 3rd and the 5th because it's just a triad. All right? So on your 7th chords, definitely the 3rd and 7th. If the 5th is altered, try adding that in as well. Okay? And if you're dealing with triads, the 3rd and the root is fine, or the 3rd and the 5th is fine. Right? All right, so anyway, that's it for the guide tones. I'm going to talk about some ways in which you can kind of spice those up in a second, so I'll see you in the next chapter.